Welcome to a journey through the incredible world of biology, where we'll explore the amazing facts about life on Earth that will fascinate you as you drift off to sleep. Let these remarkable discoveries about living organisms wash over you, revealing the complexity and beauty of the natural world that surrounds us every day. The human body contains approximately 37 trillion cells, each one a tiny factory performing countless chemical reactions every second. These cells come in over 200 different types, each specialized for specific functions. Your red blood cells carry oxygen throughout your body, making about 250,000 trips from your lungs to your tissues before they wear out after about 120 days. Your body produces about 2 million new red blood cells every single second to replace those that are dying. White blood cells patrol your body like microscopic soldiers, constantly searching for invaders like bacteria and viruses. Some white blood cells can engulf and digest foreign particles, while others produce antibodies that mark invaders for destruction. Your immune system has the remarkable ability to remember pathogens it has encountered before, which is why you typically only get certain diseases once, and why vaccines work so effectively. The human brain contains about 86 billion neurons, each capable of forming thousands of connections with other neurons. The total number of possible neural connections in your brain exceeds the number of atoms in the known universe. Every thought you have, every memory you store, every movement you make is the result of electrical and chemical signals passing between these neurons at speeds of up to 270 miles per hour. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's total energy, even though it only accounts for about 2% of your body weight. During sleep, your brain doesn't shut down but rather enters a highly active state where it consolidates memories, clears out metabolic waste products, and processes the day's experiences. Dreams occur primarily during rapid eye movement sleep, when your brain is almost as active as when you're awake. The purpose of dreaming is still debated by scientists, but it may help with emotional regulation, memory consolidation, and problem solving. Your DNA, if uncoiled from all your cells and stretched out, would reach from Earth to the Sun and back over 600 times. Yet all this information is packed into a nucleus, so small you need a microscope to see it. DNA is made up of 4 chemical bases that pair up in specific ways, and the sequence of these bases contains the instructions for building and operating your entire body. You share about 99.9% of your DNA with every other human on Earth. The tiny differences in that remaining 0.1% are responsible for all the variations we see between individuals. Interestingly, you share about 98.8% of your DNA with chimpanzees, about 90% with cats, about 85% with mice, about 61% with fruit flies, and even about 60% with bananas. This shows that all life on Earth shares a common ancestry and uses the same basic genetic code. Your body is home to trillions of microorganisms, collectively called your microbiome, and these microscopic residents outnumber your human cells. The bacteria in your gut alone weigh about 2 to 3 pounds and include over 1,000 different species. These microbes aren't just hitchhikers. They're essential partners that help digest food, produce vitamins, train your immune system, and even influence your mood and behavior through the gut-brain axis. Some gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which affect your mental state. An imbalanced microbiome has been linked to conditions ranging from obesity and diabetes to depression and anxiety. Your appendix, once thought to be a useless vestigial organ, actually serves as a safe house for beneficial gut bacteria, allowing them to repopulate your intestines after illness wipes them out. The heart beats about 100,000 times per day, pumping roughly 2,000 gallons of blood through 60,000 miles of blood vessels. Over a lifetime, your heart will beat more than 2.5 billion times without ever stopping for a rest. The heart generates its own electrical signals through specialized pacemaker cells, which is why a heart can continue beating even when removed from the body, as long as it has oxygen and nutrients. The sound of a heartbeat is actually the sound of heart valves closing. The first sound, the familiar lub, occurs when the valves between the atria and ventricles close, while the second sound, the dub, happens when the valves between the ventricles and major arteries close. Your stomach produces about 2 liters of hydrochloric acid each day, a substance so corrosive it could dissolve metal. Yet your stomach lining remains unharmed because it's protected by a thick layer of mucus that regenerates constantly. The cells lining your stomach are replaced every 3 to 5 days because they're in such a harsh environment. When this protective barrier breaks down, you can develop ulcers. For many years, stress and spicy food were thought to cause ulcers. But we now know that most ulcers are actually caused by a bacterium called Helicobacter pylori that can survive in the stomach's acidic environment. The liver is the largest internal organ and performs over 500 different functions. It detoxifies harmful substances, produces bile to digest fats, stores vitamins and minerals, regulates blood sugar levels, and manufactures blood clotting factors. The liver has an amazing ability to regenerate itself. You can remove up to 75% of the liver, and it will grow back to its full size within a few months. This regenerative ability is unique among human organs and has made liver transplants from living donors possible. Your lungs contain about 300 million tiny air sacs called alveoli, which provide a surface area roughly the size of a tennis court for gas exchange. Every day you take about 20,000 breaths, moving about 2,000 gallons of air in and out of your lungs. The right lung is slightly larger than the left lung because the left side must share space with the heart. Your lungs aren't just breathing organs. They also play a role in regulating blood pH and filtering out small blood clots. The oldest living organisms on Earth are trees. A bristlecone pine tree in California named Methuselah is over 4,800 years old, meaning it was already ancient when the pyramids of Egypt were built. Some clonal colonies, where multiple trees grow from the same root system, are even older. A colony of quaking aspen trees in Utah called Pando has a root system estimated to be over 80,000 years old, making it potentially the oldest living organism on the planet. Trees communicate with each other through underground fungal networks, sometimes called the Wood Wide Web. Through these mycorrhizal connections, trees can share nutrients, warn each other of insect attacks, and even support their sick neighbors by sending them nutrients. Mother trees, the largest and oldest trees in a forest, play a central role in these networks, nurturing their offspring and maintaining the health of the forest community. The blue whale is the largest animal ever known to have existed, even larger than any dinosaur. These magnificent creatures can grow up to 100 feet long and weigh as much as 200 tons. A blue whale's heart alone weighs about 400 pounds and is the size of a small car. Their arteries are so large that a small child could crawl through them. Despite their enormous size, blue whales feed primarily on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, consuming up to 4 tons of them per day during feeding season. Blue whales produce the loudest sounds of any animal on Earth, with calls reaching up to 188 decibels. These sounds can travel hundreds of miles through the ocean, allowing whales to communicate across vast distances. The hummingbird has the fastest metabolism of any vertebrate. Their hearts beat up to 1,200 times per minute, and they must consume more than their body weight in nectar each day just to survive. Hummingbirds are the only birds that can fly backwards and hover in place like a helicopter. To achieve these feats, they beat their wings up to 80 times per second. At night, hummingbirds enter a state called torpor, where their metabolism slows dramatically and their body temperature drops to conserve energy. Without this adaptation, they would starve to death during the night when they cannot feed. The Arctic tern makes the longest migration of any animal, traveling from the Arctic to Antarctica and back each year, a round trip of about 44,000 miles. Over its 30-year lifespan, an Arctic tern may fly the equivalent of 3 trips to the moon and back. These birds experience more daylight than any other creature because they follow summer from one pole to the other, essentially living in endless summer. Salmon are famous for their incredible navigation abilities. After hatching in freshwater streams, young salmon travel to the ocean where they may roam thousands of miles. Years later, they return to spawn in the exact same stream where they were born, navigating with remarkable precision using the Earth's magnetic field, the position of the sun, and their sense of smell to detect the unique chemical signature of their home stream. This journey upstream is so demanding that Pacific salmon die shortly after spawning, their bodies providing nutrients that feed the next generation. The mimic octopus is one of the most intelligent invertebrates and can impersonate other animals. It can change its color, pattern, and texture to match its surroundings in less than a second. More impressively, it can alter its shape and behavior to mimic dangerous animals like lionfish, sea snakes, and jellyfish, choosing which animal to impersonate based on which predator is threatening it. Octopuses have 3 hearts in blue blood. 2 of their hearts pump blood to the gills, while the third pumps it to the rest of the body. Their blood uses copper to carry oxygen instead of iron like ours, which is why it's blue instead of red. Octopuses have neurons distributed throughout their 8 arms, which contain 2/3 of their total neurons, allowing each arm to act semi-independently and taste whatever it touches. Bees are essential pollinators responsible for 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat. A single bee colony can pollinate 300 million flowers in a day. Bees have an amazing ability to communicate through dance. When a forager bee finds a good source of nectar, she returns to the hive and performs a waggle dance that tells other bees the direction and distance to the flowers. The angle of the dance relative to the vertical indicates the direction relative to the sun, while the duration of the waggle indicates the distance. Bees can see ultraviolet light, which reveals patterns on flowers that are invisible to humans, essentially seeing a completely different world than we do. Many flowers have evolved ultraviolet patterns that guide bees to their nectar, like landing strips on a runway. Ants are among the most successful animals on Earth, with a total biomass that may equal or exceed that of humans. Leafcutter ants are sophisticated farmers that cut pieces of leaves and carry them back to underground gardens, where they cultivate a specific fungus that they eat. These ants have been farming for over 50 million years, long before humans invented agriculture. Different ant species have evolved remarkable social structures. Some ants keep aphids as livestock, protecting them from predators and milking them for the sweet honeydew they produce. Army ants form massive colonies with millions of members and go on organized raids that can overwhelm almost any small animal in their path. Some ants can lift objects 50 times their body weight, and if they were human-sized, they could lift a car over their heads. The axolotl is a salamander that never grows up. While most amphibians undergo metamorphosis from an aquatic larva to a terrestrial adult, axolotls remain in their larval form throughout their lives, a phenomenon called neoteny. They retain their external gills and live permanently in water. What makes axolotls truly remarkable is their regenerative ability. They can regrow entire limbs, parts of their brain, heart, and spinal cord without scarring. An axolotl can regenerate the same limb over 100 times, and the new limb is perfect, with all the bones, muscles, nerves, and blood vessels in the right places. Scientists study axolotls intensively, hoping to understand how this regeneration works and potentially apply it to human medicine. The immortal jellyfish, Turritopsis doania, can theoretically live forever. When this jellyfish becomes injured, sick, or old, it can revert to its juvenile polyp stage and then grow into an adult again, essentially resetting its biological clock. This process can repeat indefinitely, making it biologically immortal, though individual jellyfish still die from predation and disease. The Venus flytrap is one of the most famous carnivorous plants. It lives in nutrient-poor soil, so it supplements its diet by catching and digesting insects. The trap has trigger hairs on its inner surface, and it must be touched twice within 20 seconds for it to close, a mechanism that prevents it from wasting energy closing on raindrops or debris. Once an insect is trapped, the plant secretes digestive enzymes and absorbs the nutrients over several days. The Venus flytrap can count touches and measure time intervals, despite having no nervous system or brain. This shows that intelligence and decision-making aren't limited to animals with brains. The corpse flower produces the largest unbranched inflorescence in the world and gets its name from its smell, which resembles rotting flesh. This offensive odor attracts carrion beetles and flies that pollinate the plant. The corpse flower blooms rarely, sometimes waiting years or even decades between blooms, and each bloom lasts only 24 to 48 hours. The plant generates heat through thermogenesis, warming itself to help spread its scent and perhaps to provide warmth that attracts pollinators. Mushrooms are the fruiting bodies of fungi, organisms that are more closely related to animals than to plants. The main body of a fungus is a network of thread-like filaments called mycelium that spreads through soil or wood. The largest known organism on Earth is a honey fungus in Oregon, whose mycelium covers over 2,000 acres and is estimated to be between 2,000 and 8,000 years old. Fungi play crucial roles in ecosystems by decomposing dead organic matter and recycling nutrients. Without fungi, dead plant material would accumulate and nutrients would remain locked away, unable to support new life. Some fungi form partnerships with plant roots, helping the plants absorb water and nutrients in exchange for sugars the plants produce through photosynthesis. Bacteria are the oldest and most abundant life forms on Earth, having existed for at least 3.5 billion years. They're found in every habitat imaginable, from boiling hot springs and acidic lakes to the depths of the ocean and high in the atmosphere. The total biomass of bacteria on Earth exceeds that of all plants and animals combined. A single gram of soil can contain billions of bacteria representing thousands of species, most of which have never been identified or studied. Bacteria reproduce astonishingly fast, with some species dividing every 20 minutes under ideal conditions, meaning a single bacterium could theoretically produce billions of descendants in a day. Bacteria have evolved incredible metabolic diversity, with different species able to eat almost anything, including oil, plastic, metal, and even radioactive waste. Some bacteria perform photosynthesis like plants, while others can survive without oxygen or even produce their own light through bioluminescence. The bacteria in the deep ocean near hydrothermal vents can survive temperatures above 200 degrees Fahrenheit and use chemicals from the vents as their energy source instead of sunlight. Viruses occupy a strange position between living and non-living. They can reproduce and evolve, but only by hijacking the cellular machinery of host cells. Outside a host cell, a virus is just an inert package of genetic material wrapped in protein. There are more viruses on Earth than any other biological entity, with an estimated 10 non-alien individual virus particles. If you line them all up, they would stretch for 100 million light-years. Most viruses don't infect humans and actually play important roles in regulating bacterial populations and driving evolution. Bacteriophages, viruses that infect bacteria, are being researched as alternatives to antibiotics for treating bacterial infections. The giant panda is one of the most specialized bears, feeding almost exclusively on bamboo despite having a digestive system designed for eating meat. Pandas must eat between 26 and 84 pounds of bamboo per day, because they digest only about 17% of what they eat. To accommodate this low-nutrient diet, pandas have evolved a false thumb, an enlarged wrist bone that helps them grip bamboo stalks, and they spend 12 to 16 hours per day eating. Newborn pandas are incredibly small relative to their mothers, weighing only about 3 to 5 ounces at birth, which is about 1/900th of the mother's weight. This is one of the smallest size disparities between mother and baby in mammals. Dolphins are among the most intelligent animals on Earth, with large brains relative to their body size. They have complex social structures, use tools, teach their young, and have even been observed engaging in play for its own sake. Dolphins communicate through a sophisticated system of clicks, whistles, and body language. Each dolphin has a unique signature whistle that functions like a name, and dolphins will call to each other using these signature whistles. They can recognize their own signature whistles even when computer-modified, showing a level of self-awareness found in few animals. Dolphins use echolocation to navigate and hunt in murky water, producing rapid clicking sounds and listening to the echoes that bounce back from objects. This biosonar is so precise that dolphins can detect a golf ball-sized object from several hundred feet away. Elephants are highly intelligent and emotional animals with exceptional memories. They live in matriarchal societies led by the oldest female, whose knowledge and experience guide the herd to water sources and safe areas. Elephants can recognize themselves in mirrors, a sign of self-awareness shared by only a few species. They show empathy and appear to grieve their dead, sometimes returning to the bones of deceased herd members and gently touching them with their trunks. Elephants communicate through low-frequency rumbles that can travel several miles through the ground, allowing herds to coordinate over great distances. They can detect these vibrations through sensors in their feet. An elephant's trunk contains about 40,000 muscles and is capable of both delicate tasks like picking up a single blade of grass and powerful actions like lifting logs weighing hundreds of pounds. Penguins are flightless birds that have adapted their wings into flippers for swimming. Emperor penguins endure the harshest breeding conditions of any bird, incubating their eggs during the Antarctic winter, when temperatures can drop to -70 degrees Fahrenheit. The male emperor penguin holds a single egg on his feet under a fold of skin for over 2 months without eating, losing up to half his body weight while the female is at sea feeding. When she returns, she regurgitates food for the chick, and the male finally leaves to feed himself. Emperor penguins can dive deeper than any other bird, reaching depths of over 1,800 feet and holding their breath for over 20 minutes. Chameleons are famous for changing color, but this ability is often misunderstood. They don't change color to match their surroundings like camouflage, but rather to communicate their mood, temperature, and social status. Color changes are produced by special cells called chromatophores that contain pigments and can expand or contract. Below these are cells containing tiny crystals that reflect light, and chameleons can adjust the spacing of these crystals to create different colors through structural coloration. Similar to how a soap bubble produces colors, chameleons also have remarkable eyes that can move independently, allowing them to look in two different directions at once. This gives them a nearly 360-degree field of view. When they spot prey, both eyes focus forward for depth perception, and they shoot out their sticky tongue, which can be longer than their body, to catch insects in a fraction of a second. Bats are the only mammals capable of true sustained flight. They make up about 20% of all mammalian species, with over 1,400 species worldwide. Most bats are insectivores and provide valuable pest control services, with some species eating thousands of insects in a single night. 3 species of bats feed on blood, but they primarily target livestock and wildlife rather than humans. Vampire bats have evolved fascinating adaptations, including heat sensors on their noses to locate blood vessels, anticoagulants in their saliva to keep blood flowing, and social behaviors including food sharing. Bats that fail to find food will beg from roostmates, who will regurgitate blood to feed them, and these altruistic bats are more likely to receive help when they need it in the future. Most bats navigate and hunt using echolocation, producing ultrasonic calls and listening to the echoes to build a detailed acoustic picture of their environment. Some moths have evolved the ability to hear bat echolocation and will take evasive action when they detect a bat. The platypus is one of the strangest mammals on Earth, with a duck-like bill, beaver tail, otter feet, and the ability to lay eggs. When European scientists first encountered a platypus specimen, they thought it was an elaborate hoax. Male platypuses are one of the few venomous mammals, possessing venomous spurs on their hind legs that can cause excruciating pain in humans. The platypus bill isn't just for show. It's packed with electroreceptors that detect the electrical signals produced by muscle contractions in prey animals. This allows platypuses to hunt with their eyes, ears, and nostrils closed, relying entirely on their electrical sense. They're most active at night, diving to the bottom of streams to hunt for insect larvae, freshwater shrimp, and other small prey. Naked mole rats are bizarre rodents that live in underground colonies with a social structure similar to bees and ants. Only one female, the queen, reproduces, while the others are workers that maintain the burrow, gather food, and defend the colony. Naked mole rats have evolved remarkable adaptations to their oxygen-poor underground environment. They can survive 18 minutes without oxygen by switching their metabolism to use fructose instead of glucose, a strategy previously only seen in plants. They're also resistant to cancer, virtually immune to pain, and can live over 30 years, which is exceptionally long for a rodent. Scientists study naked mole rats intensively because understanding their cancer resistance and longevity might help develop treatments for human diseases. The mantis shrimp has the most complex eyes in the animal kingdom, with 16 types of color receptors compared to our 3. This allows them to see colors we can't even imagine, including ultraviolet and polarized light. Mantis shrimp eyes move independently, and each has trinocular vision, meaning they can judge distance with just one eye. Mantis shrimp are also incredibly violent predators, despite being only a few inches long. They have 2 types of weapons. Some species have clubs that they strike with the acceleration of a bullet, while others have spears they impale prey with. The club-type strike is so fast and powerful that it creates cavitation bubbles in the water that collapse with a flash of light, and a shockwave that can stun or kill prey even if the strike misses. The force of their punch has been measured at over 1,500 newtons, with strike speeds of 50 miles per hour. Sloths are famous for being extremely slow, moving through trees at a rate of about 6 to 8 feet per minute. This slow movement is an adaptation that helps them avoid detection by predators like eagles and big cats. Sloths spend most of their lives hanging upside down in trees, descending only about once a week to defecate at the base of their home tree. Why they risk this dangerous trip to the ground, instead of simply defecating from the trees, is still debated. But it may be related to fertilizing their home tree, or to a symbiotic relationship with moths that live in sloth fur. Sloths are excellent swimmers and can hold their breath for up to 40 minutes by slowing their heart rate. Their slow metabolism means they can survive on very little food, and they may take a month to digest a single meal. Green algae grows in their fur, providing camouflage and possibly supplemental nutrition when sloths groom themselves. Koalas are marsupials that feed almost exclusively on eucalyptus leaves, which are toxic to most animals. Koalas have specialized digestive systems with an extremely long cecum, a pouch where bacteria break down the toxic compounds and digest the tough leaves. This diet is so low in nutrition that koalas must conserve energy by sleeping up to 22 hours per day. Baby koalas, called joeys, face an interesting challenge when transitioning from their mother's milk to eucalyptus leaves. The bacteria needed to digest eucalyptus aren't present at birth, so the mother produces a special type of feces, called pap, that the joey eats to acquire the necessary gut bacteria. Koalas have fingerprints that are remarkably similar to human fingerprints, so similar that they can fool forensic equipment. The purpose of these fingerprints is thought to be improved grip when climbing trees and selecting the best leaves. Giraffes are the tallest mammals on Earth, with males reaching heights of up to 18 feet. Their long necks, which can be over 6 feet long, contain only 7 vertebrae, the same number as humans and almost all other mammals. These vertebrae are just much larger and separated by highly flexible joints. The giraffe's heart must work incredibly hard to pump blood all the way up that long neck to the brain, generating blood pressure that would cause serious problems in most animals. To prevent brain damage when a giraffe lowers its head to drink, they have a complex system of valves and elastic blood vessels that regulate blood flow. Giraffes have the longest tongue of any land mammal, measuring about 18 to 20 inches long. This tongue is prehensile and dark-colored, possibly to protect it from sunburn, since giraffes spend many hours each day feeding on acacia trees, reaching their tongues deep into thorny branches to strip leaves. Fireflies produce light through a chemical reaction in their abdomens, a process called bioluminescence. They combine a chemical called luciferin with oxygen in the presence of the enzyme luciferase, producing light with almost no heat. This is one of the most efficient light-producing reactions known, with nearly 100% of the energy converted to light compared to incandescent bulbs that waste 90% of their energy as heat. Fireflies use their flashing light patterns to attract mates, with each species having its own unique pattern that functions like a mating call. Some female fireflies of the genus Photuris have evolved to mimic the flash patterns of other species. When males approach expecting to mate, these femme fatale fireflies eat them, gaining nutrients and defensive chemicals that protect them from spiders. Coral reefs are often called the rainforests of the sea because they support an incredible diversity of life. Though they cover less than 1% of the ocean floor, coral reefs are home to about 25% of all marine species. What many people don't realize is that corals themselves are animals, not plants. Each coral is actually a colony of thousands of tiny polyps, soft-bodied animals related to jellyfish and sea anemones. These polyps have a mutualistic relationship with microscopic algae called zooxanthellae that live inside their tissues. The algae photosynthesize and provide the coral with most of its energy, while the coral provides the algae with a protected environment and access to sunlight. This partnership allows corals to thrive in nutrient-poor tropical waters and build massive reef structures from calcium carbonate. When corals become stressed by high temperatures or other factors, they expel their algae, losing their color and primary food source, a phenomenon called coral bleaching. If conditions don't improve, the coral dies. Sea turtles are ancient mariners that have swum the world's oceans for over 100 million years, surviving the extinction event that killed the dinosaurs. There are 7 species of sea turtles, and all are threatened or endangered today. Female sea turtles return to nest on the same beaches where they were born, sometimes traveling thousands of miles to reach these sites. Scientists aren't entirely sure how they navigate, but it appears they can sense the Earth's magnetic field and use this internal compass to find their way. When baby sea turtles hatch, they immediately scramble toward the ocean, guided by light. Historically, they oriented toward the bright horizon over the ocean, but artificial lights now confuse many hatchlings, leading them inland where they die. Only about 1 in 1,000 sea turtle hatchlings survives to adulthood, facing predators, fishing nets, plastic pollution, and habitat loss. The cuttlefish is a master of disguise, able to change its skin color, pattern, and texture in less than a second to blend with its surroundings or to communicate. Cuttlefish have specialized skin cells, including chromatophores that contain pigments, iridophores that reflect light to create iridescent colors, and leucophores that scatter light to produce white colors. Each chromatophore is surrounded by tiny muscles that can expand or contract it, and cuttlefish have direct neurological control over millions of these cells. The most fascinating aspect is that cuttlefish are colorblind, seeing the world in shades of gray, yet they can perfectly match the colors and patterns of their environment. Scientists are still trying to understand how they accomplish this feat. Cuttlefish are also highly intelligent with large brains relative to their body size. They can solve complex puzzles, use tools, and even delay gratification, passing the marshmallow test that's typically used to measure self-control in children. Komodo dragons are the largest lizards on Earth, reaching lengths of 10 feet and weighing up to 200 pounds. For many years, it was believed that Komodo dragons killed their prey through bacterial infection from their filthy mouths. But recent research has shown that they actually have venom glands that produce toxins that prevent blood clotting and lower blood pressure. When a Komodo dragon bites prey, it delivers venom along with bacteria, and the combination causes the victim to go into shock and bleed profusely. Komodo dragons have an excellent sense of smell, using their forked tongues to sample the air and delivering scent particles to an organ in the roof of their mouths. They can detect a dead or dying animal from several miles away. Female Komodo dragons can reproduce through parthenogenesis, producing offspring without mating with a male. This is an adaptation that allows a single female to establish a population in a new area. The eggs produced through parthenogenesis develop into males, which can then mate with their mother to produce both male and female offspring, ensuring genetic diversity in the new population. The electric eel is not actually an eel but a type of knifefish, more closely related to carp and catfish than to true eels. Despite this misnomer, electric eels can generate powerful electric shocks of up to 860 volts, enough to stun a horse or potentially kill a human. They have 3 electric organs made of modified muscle cells, called electrocytes, that make up about 80% of their body. These cells are stacked like batteries in series, with each cell generating a small voltage that adds up to produce the shocking total. Electric eels use these shocks for multiple purposes, including navigation, communication, stunning prey, and self-defense. They can vary the voltage and frequency of their discharges. Low-voltage pulses are used constantly for navigation and to detect objects in murky water, functioning like biological radar. High-voltage bursts are reserved for hunting and defense. When hunting, an electric eel will first emit a series of high-frequency low-voltage pulses that cause prey muscles to twitch involuntarily, revealing hidden fish. Then it delivers a high-voltage shock to stun the prey before swallowing it whole. Electric eels must surface to breathe air every 10 minutes or so, because they obtain about 80% of their oxygen from air, using a specialized mouth lining. The archerfish has evolved an amazing hunting technique. It can spit jets of water up to 6 feet through the air, with remarkable accuracy, to knock insects off overhanging vegetation into the water where the fish can eat them. The archerfish forms its mouth into a tube and compresses its gill covers to generate high-pressure water jets. What makes this even more impressive is that the fish must compensate for the refraction of light at the water's surface, which makes the insect appear to be in a different position than it actually is. Archerfish learn to correct for this optical illusion and can hit targets with over 90% accuracy. They also show sophisticated hunting strategies, often wading below where they've knocked an insect into the water to catch it before other fish can steal their meal. Young archerfish learn this skill by watching adults, showing cultural transmission of knowledge. The mimic octopus discovered in the waters off Indonesia in 1998 is perhaps the most accomplished shapeshifter in the animal kingdom. Not only can it change color and texture like other octopuses, but it can also change its shape and behavior to impersonate at least 15 different species, including lionfish, flatfish, sea snakes, jellyfish, and even rocks. The octopus chooses which animal to mimic based on the type of predator threatening it. When confronted by a fish that eats octopuses, it might mimic a banded sea snake, swimming with its arms trailing behind its body and its head raised. When threatened by a damselfish, which aren't afraid of sea snakes but fear lionfish, the octopus stretches its arms in different directions and moves them in wave-like motions to resemble the flowing fins of a lionfish. This ability requires not just physical transformation, but also an understanding of predator-prey relationships and decision-making about which disguise would be most effective. The bombardier beetle has evolved one of the most remarkable defense mechanisms in nature. When threatened, it can spray a boiling hot chemical mixture from the tip of its abdomen with explosive force. The beetle has 2 separate chambers in its abdomen. One contains a mixture of hydroquinones and hydrogen peroxide, while the other contains enzymes. When threatened, the beetle squeezes these chemicals into a reaction chamber where the enzymes catalyze a violent exothermic reaction that heats the mixture to near boiling and creates pressure. The beetle can aim this spray with remarkable precision by rotating the tip of its abdomen, and it can fire multiple times in rapid succession. This defense is so effective that few predators bother with bombardier beetles, and those that do, like certain toad species, have learned to eat them quickly by swallowing them whole before the beetle can deploy its weapon. The sea cucumber is an unlikely contender for one of the strangest defensive mechanisms. When severely threatened, some species can expel their internal organs, including their intestines, respiratory trees, and gonads, out of their anus toward predators. These sticky organs can entangle and distract the attacker while the sea cucumber escapes. Even more remarkably, the sea cucumber can regenerate all these organs over the course of several weeks. This extreme form of autonomy is possible because sea cucumbers have amazing regenerative abilities. Some species can even split themselves in 2 when stressed, with each half regenerating into a complete animal. Sea cucumbers play important ecological roles on the ocean floor, processing sediment and recycling nutrients. They've been described as the earthworms of the sea, continuously eating sediment extracting organic matter and excreting clean sand. The lyrebird of Australia is often called the world's best mimic. These ground-dwelling birds can accurately reproduce almost any sound they hear, including chainsaws, car alarms, camera shutters, and other bird songs. Male lyrebirds have large territories and elaborate display areas, where they perform complex songs incorporating these mimic sounds, along with their own distinctive calls. They can learn new sounds throughout their lives, and have been recorded mimicking sounds heard from humans years earlier. The purpose of this mimicry is to attract females by demonstrating the male's age, experience, and fitness. A lyrebird with a larger repertoire of sounds has likely survived longer and learned from more environments. The males also perform elaborate dances during their vocal displays, spreading their spectacular tail feathers that resemble a Greek lyre. Leaf insects are masters of camouflage, looking so much like leaves that they're almost impossible to spot in their forest habitats. Different species mimic different types of leaves. Some look like green living leaves with veins, while others look like dead brown leaves, complete with holes and blemishes. Female leaf insects can reproduce without males through parthenogenesis, though sexual reproduction also occurs. When leaf insects move, they sway back and forth mimicking a leaf blowing in the wind. Their eggs look like seeds and have a special structure that attracts ants. The ants carry the eggs back to their nests, eat the nutritious coating, and discard the eggs in their waste chambers, which provides a safe place for the young leaf insects to develop away from predators. This is another example of the complex relationships that evolution can produce. The immortal jellyfish we mentioned earlier is not the only creature with unusual longevity. Greenland sharks are the longest-lived vertebrates known, with one specimen estimated to be between 270 and 512 years old, based on carbon dating of proteins in its eye lens. These massive sharks grow very slowly in the cold waters of the North Atlantic and Arctic Oceans, reaching maturity only after 150 years. The oldest individuals alive today would have been born during the reign of King Louis XIV of France. Greenland sharks move slowly and have poor vision, with many blinded by parasitic copepods that attach to their eyes, yet they're successful predators that feed on fish, seals, and even polar bears. How they catch fast-moving prey remains a mystery, though some scientists theorize they may ambush sleeping seals. The flesh of Greenland sharks is toxic to humans due to high concentrations of trimethylamine oxide, which converts to trimethylamine during decomposition, giving the meat a smell like strong household cleaner. Some traditional Icelandic preparations ferment the meat to break down the toxins, creating a dish called hakkarl. The African mole rat is another creature with extraordinary longevity, living up to 30 years in underground burrow systems that can extend for miles. Like their naked mole rat cousins, these animals live in hierarchical colonies with a single breeding female, but unlike naked mole rats, they have fur. They dig extensive tunnel systems using their large incisors, which grow continuously throughout their lives and can even be moved independently of each other. The lips close behind the incisors so that mole rats can dig without getting soil in their mouths. These animals rarely, if ever, come to the surface, spending their entire lives in darkness. They've evolved to have almost no circadian rhythm, since they never experience the day-night cycle. Mole rats communicate through a sophisticated system of vocalizations, and by drumming on tunnel walls with their heads, creating vibrations that travel through the soil. The Turritopsis jellyfish isn't alone in its ability to reverse its life cycle. Some species of flatworms can also undergo reverse development, de-differentiating their cells and reorganizing their body plan. When food becomes scarce, these flatworms can shrink, breaking down and reabsorbing their own tissues. If food remains scarce, they continue shrinking and eventually revert to an earlier developmental stage. When food becomes available again, they grow back to their adult size. Some flatworms can repeat this cycle many times. This plasticity is possible because flatworms have abundant stem cells called neoblasts throughout their bodies that can differentiate into any cell type. These neoblasts also give flatworms incredible regenerative abilities. Some species can regenerate a complete individual from a fragment as small as 1/300th of the original animal. If you cut certain flatworms into dozens of pieces, each piece will regenerate into a complete worm. Scientists are intensely studying flatworm regeneration because understanding how they coordinate whole-body regeneration could have important medical applications. Tardigrades, those microscopic water bears we mentioned before, deserve more attention for their extraordinary survival abilities. These tiny eight-legged animals have survived all 5 mass extinctions on Earth and are found in virtually every environment from mountaintops to ocean trenches. When conditions become unfavorable, tardigrades enter cryptobiosis, expelling almost all water from their bodies and forming a structure called a ton. In this state, their metabolism drops to 0.01% of normal levels, and they can survive extreme conditions that would kill almost any other organism. Tardigrades have survived being frozen to -272 degrees Celsius, just 1 degree above absolute zero. They've been heated to 150 degrees Celsius and exposed to pressures 6 times greater than those in the deepest ocean trenches. They can survive without water for decades and have lived through exposure to 6,000 times the radiation that would kill a human. In experiments, tardigrades were sent outside spacecraft where they were exposed to the vacuum of space and intense solar radiation, and many survived and even reproduced afterward. How do tardigrades accomplish these feats? They produce special protective proteins called tardigrade-specific intrinsically disordered proteins that form a glass-like matrix inside cells, protecting cellular structures from damage. They also have extremely efficient DNA repair mechanisms that can fix breaks in their genetic material caused by radiation. The mantis is an ambush predator famous for its preying posture, which is actually a hunting stance. These insects have triangular heads with enormous compound eyes that provide excellent binocular vision, allowing them to accurately judge the distance to their prey. Mantises can strike with incredible speed, catching flies and other insects out of the air with their spiny forelegs in just 30 to 50 milliseconds. Their strike is one of the fastest movements in the animal kingdom. Mantises are the only insects known to have 3D vision. They perceive depth using a system different from human stereovision. While humans compare the images from our 2 eyes to determine depth, mantises appear to detect differences in motion between what each eye sees. Mantises are also known for their unusual mating behavior. Female mantises sometimes bite off the heads of their mates during or after copulation, though this behavior is less common in the wild than in laboratory settings where the males can't escape. The male's body continues the mating process even after decapitation because the relevant nerve centers are in the abdomen, not the brain. This cannibalistic behavior provides the female with nutrients that increase the number and health of her eggs. The walking stick insect is another master of camouflage, perfectly resembling twigs complete with appropriate coloration and even fake leaf buds. Some species can change color over the course of days or weeks to better match their surroundings, while others adjust their posture to look more like specific types of branches or to minimize their shadow. Walking sticks have an interesting defensive behavior called catalepsy, where they become completely rigid when disturbed, maintaining the illusion of being a stick even when touched. Some species can also emit defensive chemicals or drop legs to escape predators, regenerating the lost limbs at their next molt. The largest insects that ever lived were dragonfly relatives from the Carboniferous period, with wingspans of over 2 feet. Modern dragonflies are much smaller, but remain impressive aerial predators with wingspans up to 6 inches. Dragonflies have enormous compound eyes with up to 30,000 individual lenses, providing nearly 360-degree vision, with only a small blind spot directly behind them. They can see in color, including ultraviolet light, and can detect polarized light. Dragonflies are exceptional flyers, able to hover, fly backwards, and change direction in midair. Their 4 wings can be controlled independently, providing unmatched maneuverability. When hunting, dragonflies demonstrate sophisticated predatory behavior. Rather than simply chasing prey, they predict where the prey will be and intercept it, showing anticipation of future positions. This requires complex neural computation despite their tiny brains. Dragonflies catch over 95% of the prey they pursue, making them the most successful hunters in the animal kingdom. The pistol shrimp creates one of the loudest sounds in the ocean, using a specialized claw that can snap shut with incredible speed. When the claw closes, it shoots out a jet of water that forms a cavitation bubble. When this bubble collapses, it produces a sound over 200 decibels, louder than a gunshot. Along with a flash of light called sonoluminescence and temperatures of over 4,000 degrees Celsius, nearly as hot as the surface of the sun. This bubble collapse can stun or kill small fish and break apart the shells of prey. The pistol shrimp uses this weapon for hunting, defense, and communication. Some species form symbiotic relationships with gobies, small fish that act as guards. The nearly blind shrimp maintains a burrow while the fish watches for predators, and the two stay in constant contact through touch, with the shrimp keeping an antenna on the fish. When danger approaches, the goby signals with fin movements and both quickly retreat into the burrow. The wood frog survives freezing temperatures that would kill most vertebrates. During winter in Alaska and northern Canada, wood frogs allow up to 70% of their body water to freeze into ice crystals. Their hearts stop beating, they stop breathing, and they show no brain activity for weeks or even months. In spring, they thaw out and hop away completely healthy. Wood frogs survive this extreme freezing by producing high concentrations of glucose in their cells, which acts as a cryoprotectant similar to antifreeze. This glucose prevents ice from forming inside cells, where it would rupture cellular structures. Ice does form in the spaces between cells and organs, but this is less damaging. The glucose also protects cellular membranes and proteins from damage. When temperatures rise, the frogs thaw from the inside out, with their hearts and brains becoming functional before the rest of the body has completely thawed. The anglerfish lives in the deep ocean where no sunlight penetrates, and it has evolved one of the strangest hunting methods. Have a modified dorsal fin that extends forward over their heads like a fishing rod, complete with a bioluminescent lure at the tip. This lure contains bacteria that produce light, and the anglerfish can control when this light shines by regulating blood flow to the lure. In the pitch-black depths, this light attracts curious prey fish, which the anglerfish then swallows whole using its enormous mouth and expandable stomach. Some anglerfish can swallow prey twice their own size. Male anglerfish are much smaller than females and have a bizarre life strategy. When a male finds a female, he bites onto her and never lets go. His mouth fuses with her skin, and their circulatory systems connect. The male then degenerates, losing his eyes, fins, and most organs, essentially becoming a permanent sperm-producing organ attached to the female. Multiple males can attach to a single female. This strange arrangement, solves the problem of finding a mate in the vast dark ocean. The Mexican salamander, called the axolotl that we mentioned earlier, inhabits only a small region of canals and lakes near Mexico City, and it's critically endangered in the wild due to habitat loss and pollution. In captivity, axolotls come in various colors including pink, white, golden, and dark gray, though wild individuals are typically dark with a greenish tinge. The name axolotl comes from Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, and roughly translates to water dog. In Aztec mythology, the god Xolotl transformed into an axolotl to avoid being sacrificed. Axolotls were an important food source for the Aztecs and remain a delicacy in some regions of Mexico. The ability of axolotls to remain permanently juvenile is fascinating because they can be induced to metamorphose into a terrestrial form if given thyroid hormones. This adult form looks like a typical salamander and can live on land, though it's less healthy and doesn't live as long as the aquatic larval form. In nature, metamorphosis rarely occurs, but some closely related salamanders do undergo it naturally. Scientists aren't entirely sure why axolotls have evolved to skip metamorphosis, but it may be because their aquatic habitat provided all the resources they needed without the advantages that terrestrial life might offer. The coconut crab is the largest terrestrial arthropod, with a leg span of up to 3 feet and the ability to crack open coconuts with its powerful claws. Despite their name, coconuts make up only a small part of their diet. They're omnivorous scavengers that eat fruits, nuts, carrion, and even hunt rats and seabirds. Coconut crabs are actually a species of hermit crab, but only the young crabs use shells for protection. Adults develop a hard exoskeleton and no longer need borrowed shells. These crabs can climb trees and have been observed scaling coconut palms 20 feet high to harvest coconuts. They have an excellent sense of smell and can detect food sources from long distances. Coconut crabs need to return to the ocean only to release their eggs, and the larvae develop in the sea before returning to land. On some Pacific islands, coconut crabs are valued as food and have been overharvested, leading to population declines. The hagfish is one of the most primitive living vertebrates and has barely changed in over 300 million years. These eel-shaped fish live on the ocean floor and feed primarily on dead and dying animals. When threatened, hagfish produce enormous amounts of slime from glands along their bodies. A single hagfish can produce several gallons of slime within seconds. This slime is unlike any other substance in nature, expanding to 10,000 times its initial volume when it contacts seawater. It's made of protein threads similar to spider silk that create a network that traps water. This slime clogs the gills of attacking fish, causing them to suffocate if they don't release the hagfish. The hagfish itself can tie its body into a knot and slide the knot down its length to scrape off its own slime and escape. This knot-tying ability is also used for leverage when feeding, as hagfish bore into dead animals and tear off pieces of flesh. Hagfish have minimal skeletons, no jaws, and only rudimentary eyes, yet they're successful in their ecological niche. Their skin is highly prized for leather production, and they're harvested commercially in some regions. The platypus has more unusual features than just its appearance. Its genome is a fascinating mix of reptilian, mammalian, and unique features. Platypuses have genes for making egg yolk like reptiles and birds, but they also have genes for producing milk like other mammals. Though they lack nipples and instead secrete milk through pores in the skin. Their venom is used only during the breeding season, suggesting it plays a role in male competition rather than predation or general defense. The electroreception ability of the platypus is so sensitive that the animal hunts with its eyes, ears, and nostrils closed, relying entirely on electrical signals. They can detect the tiny electrical fields generated by muscle contractions of their prey even when buried in mud. This electroreception is similar to what sharks have, but it evolved independently. The echidna, the only other egg-laying mammal, shares this electrical sense. Platypuses have unusually complex sex chromosomes, with 10 sex chromosomes arranged in 5 pairs rather than the typical X, and how this system determines sex is still being studied. The hummingbird's remarkable metabolism requires feeding almost constantly during daylight hours. If a human had a comparable metabolism, we would need to consume about 300 pounds of food per day to maintain our body temperature. Hummingbirds typically consume about half their body weight in sugar each day, visiting 1,000 flowers to do so. They prefer red or orange tubular flowers, which have evolved specifically to attract hummingbird pollinators. As they feed, pollen sticks to their heads and bills, which they transfer to the next flower, providing crucial pollination services. The tongue of a hummingbird is deeply forked and can extend far beyond the beak. It has tiny hair-like structures on the end and works through capillary action, with nectar rising up grooves in the tongue. Hummingbirds can lick up to 13 times per second while feeding. Their hearts beat so fast that individual beats can't be counted by observers, producing instead a humming sound, which along with their humming wing beats gives them their name. The emperor penguin's breeding cycle is one of the most demanding in nature. After the female lays her single egg, she transfers it to the male and then leaves on a long hunting trip that can last over 2 months. The male carefully balances the egg on his feet under a fold of skin called the brood pouch, keeping it warm in the Antarctic winter. Temperatures can drop below -70 degrees Fahrenheit, with wind speeds over 100 miles per hour. The males huddle together in tight groups for warmth, slowly rotating so that individuals take turns being on the cold outside of the huddle. During this entire period, the males don't eat at all, living off their fat reserves. When the female finally returns, usually just as the egg is hatching, she regurgitates food for the chick. The male then leaves on his own hunting trip, having lost almost half his body weight. The parents take turns making these long trips to the ocean throughout the chick's development, which can take 5 months. When the chicks are old enough, they form groups called creches for warmth and protection while both parents hunt. The octopus is remarkably intelligent despite having a nervous system very different from ours. About 60% of an octopus's neurons are in its arms, which can act semi-autonomously. An arm can continue to move and respond to stimuli, even when severed from the body. Each arm can taste what it touches using chemoreceptors on their suckers, and they can solve problems like opening containers or navigating mazes without direction from the central brain. Octopuses have been observed using tools, including carrying coconut shell halves and assembling them into protective shelters. They can learn by watching other octopuses, showing observational learning previously thought to require a vertebrate brain. Octopuses are masters of escape, able to squeeze through any opening larger than their hard beak since they have no other rigid structures. They've been known to escape from aquarium tanks by removing lids, crawling across rooms, and entering other tanks to eat the occupants. Some octopuses in laboratories have learned to turn off lights by squirting water at the bulbs, apparently annoyed by the bright light. The coconut octopus carries shells and other objects for protection, stacking them and walking on 2 arms while carrying the pile. This bipedal locomotion in an octopus is unique and shows sophisticated planning and tool use. Octopuses are generally solitary and don't live long, with most species living only 1 to 2 years. They die shortly after reproducing, with females guarding their eggs without eating until they hatch, then dying of starvation. The Venus flytrap grows in only a small region of North and South Carolina, where the soil is poor in nitrogen. It supplements its nutrition by catching insects. The trap consists of two lobes that snap shut when trigger hairs are touched twice within about 20 seconds. This counting mechanism prevents the trap from wasting energy on false triggers like raindrops or wind-blown debris. When an insect triggers the trap, the lobes close in less than a second, one of the fastest movements in the plant kingdom. Small insects can escape through gaps in the closed lobes, but larger insects are trapped. If the insect continues to struggle, the lobes seal completely and begin secreting digestive enzymes. The plant essentially becomes a temporary stomach, dissolving the soft parts of the insect over several days and absorbing the nutrients. After digestion is complete, the trap reopens, ready to catch another insect. Each trap can close about 7 times before it dies and is replaced by new growth. The Venus flytrap evolved from a sundew-like ancestor that trapped insects on sticky leaves. Natural selection favored faster and more active trapping mechanisms, eventually leading to the snap trap we see today. The redwood trees of California are the tallest living things on Earth, with some individuals exceeding 375 feet in height. These giants can live for over 2,000 years. Their height is limited by the ability of water to be pulled from the roots to the leaves at the top. As trees grow taller, it becomes increasingly difficult to transport water against gravity, and eventually this physical limitation prevents further growth. Redwoods can survive forest fires because their bark is very thick, up to 12 inches, and contains chemicals that resist fire. After fires, redwoods can sprout new growth from their base. The oldest and largest redwoods have developed complex canopy ecosystems in their upper branches, with soil accumulating on the large branches and supporting ferns, huckleberry bushes, and even other tree species. Salamanders, flying squirrels, and insects live their entire lives in these canopy ecosystems, never descending to the ground. Redwood forests create their own microclimates, with the dense canopy trapping fog and moisture. The trees actually absorb water directly through their needles from fog, which supplements the water drawn from the roots. Climate change and reduced fog production along the California coast may threaten these ancient forests. The giant sequoia, a relative of the redwood, is the largest living thing by volume, with the largest specimen containing enough wood to build 40 average houses. These trees can weigh over 2 million pounds. The cacao tree produces the seeds that become chocolate, and it has a fascinating biology. The tree produces thousands of small flowers directly on its trunk and main branches, a phenomenon called cauliflory. Only about 1 to 3% of these flowers are successfully pollinated, mostly by tiny midges. Each successfully pollinated flower develops into a large pod containing 20 to 40 seeds surrounded by sweet pulp. These seeds, when fermented, dried, and roasted, become cocoa beans. The fermentation step is crucial for developing chocolate flavor and involves a succession of microorganisms including yeasts, bacteria, and fungi. Wild cacao trees grow in the understory of tropical rainforests in Central and South America, and they require shade from larger trees to thrive. Most chocolate production today comes from West Africa, where cacao was introduced from its native range. The relationship between cacao trees and their pollinators is delicate, and declining pollinator populations could threaten chocolate production. Scientists are working to understand cacao pollination better and to develop sustainable farming practices that support pollinator populations. The baobab tree of Africa can live for thousands of years and stores thousands of gallons of water in its swollen trunk, which can grow to over 40 feet in diameter. During dry seasons, Elephants sometimes break open baobab trunks to access this stored water. The trees can survive even with much of their trunks hollowed out. Baobabs have an unusual growth pattern, putting on growth mostly in girth rather than height. Their roots can spread wider than the tree is tall. The trees produce large white flowers that open at night and are pollinated by bats. The resulting fruits contain a tart powder that's rich in vitamin C and is harvested and sold as a superfood. Various parts of baobab trees are used by people for food, medicine, rope fiber, and building materials. Some ancient baobabs have hollows large enough to serve as shelters, and one famous tree in South Africa was large enough inside to function as a bar. Sadly, some of the oldest and largest baobabs have died in recent years, possibly due to climate change. As you drift deeper into sleep, consider the incredible diversity of life that evolution has produced over billions of years. From the smallest bacteria to the largest whales, from the deepest ocean trenches to the highest mountain peaks, life has found ways to thrive in almost every environment on Earth. Each organism is the result of countless generations of natural selection, fine-tuning adaptations to specific niches and challenges. The complexity and beauty of the natural world remind us that we are part of something much larger than ourselves, connected to all other living things through our shared evolutionary history. The mushroom we see above ground is just the fruiting body of a much larger organism. The main body of a fungus consists of thread-like hyphae that spread through soil or wood, forming a network called mycelium. This mycelium can extend for miles and persist for centuries. The mushroom emerges only when the fungus is ready to reproduce, releasing millions of microscopic spores into the air. Some mushrooms emerge overnight, growing with startling speed by inflating cells that were preformed within the mycelium. The largest known organism on Earth is a honey fungus in Oregon, whose mycelium covers over 2,000 acres and may be 8,000 years old. This single genetic individual weighs hundreds of tons and continues to grow and spread through the forest. Fungi are more closely related to animals than to plants, sharing with us a common ancestor that lived over 1 billion years ago. Like animals, fungi cannot produce their own food through photosynthesis and must consume organic matter. Many fungi are decomposers, breaking down dead plant and animal material and recycling nutrients back into ecosystems. Without fungi, forests would be buried under layers of undecomposed leaves and fallen trees. Other fungi are parasites, causing diseases in plants, animals, and even other fungi. Some of the most devastating plant diseases are caused by fungi, including the chestnut blight that eliminated American chestnuts from eastern forests, and the disease that caused the Irish potato famine. However, fungi can also be beneficial partners. Mycorrhizal fungi form symbiotic relationships with the roots of most plant species, extending the plant's root system and helping it absorb water and nutrients, especially phosphorus. In exchange, the plant provides the fungus with sugars produced through photosynthesis. This partnership is ancient and may have been essential for the colonization of land by plants over 400 million years ago. The first land plants likely couldn't have survived without fungal partners to help them extract nutrients from the primitive soils of that era. Some orchids are completely dependent on specific fungi for germination and growth, while many trees, including pines, oaks, and beeches, grow poorly or not at all without their fungal partners. The underground fungal networks connecting trees in a forest allow for communication and resource sharing between plants. When a tree is attacked by insects, it can send chemical warning signals through the fungal network to neighboring trees, which respond by producing defensive compounds. Trees can also share sugars through these networks, with older trees sometimes supporting younger trees or even trees of different species that are growing in deep shade. This interconnected forest system has been called the Wood Wide Web, and it challenges our understanding of plants as isolated individuals competing only for resources. Lichens are composite organisms consisting of a fungus and a photosynthetic partner, either an alga or a cyanobacterium. The fungus provides structure and protection, while the photosynthetic partner produces food. Together, they can colonize bare rock and survive in some of the harshest environments on Earth, from Antarctic rocks to desert boulders to the bark of trees in tropical rainforests. Lichens are pioneers, often the first organisms to colonize disturbed areas. They slowly break down rock surfaces through chemical weathering, creating soil that allows other plants to eventually take root. Some lichens grow extremely slowly, less than a millimeter per year, and can live for thousands of years. Scientists use lichen growth rates to date rock surfaces and ancient structures. Lichens are also extremely sensitive to air pollution, particularly sulfur dioxide, and their presence or absence can indicate air quality. Different species have different sensitivities, and experienced observers can assess pollution levels by surveying lichen communities. Some lichens produce unique chemical compounds that have antibiotic or even anti-cancer properties, and scientists are investigating these compounds for potential medical applications. The pitcher plant is another carnivorous plant that has evolved in nutrient-poor habitats. Its modified leaves form deep pitchers that collect rainwater. The rim of the pitcher is slippery, and insects that land on it often fall into the water where they drown. Some pitcher plants simply let the insects decompose in the water, then absorb the nutrients. Others secrete digestive enzymes like animal stomachs do. The largest pitcher plants can hold over a gallon of liquid and have been known to trap not just insects but also frogs, lizards, and even small mammals. Some pitcher plant species have evolved mutually beneficial relationships with other creatures. Certain species of mosquito larvae live in the water of pitcher plants, feeding on the trapped insects and not harming the plant. In fact, their waste products provide nutrients in a form the plant can more easily absorb. Some species of spiders and frogs also live in or around pitcher plants, catching insects attracted to the plant. A few pitcher plant species have become so specialized that they've largely given up catching insects and instead form relationships with tree shrews and rats. These plants have evolved to function as toilets for the animals, with the pitcher positioned to catch the animal's droppings while it feeds on nectar produced on the pitcher lid. The plant gets valuable nitrogen from the animal waste, while the animal gets a reliable food source. The ant plant, or Myrmecodia, has formed a remarkable partnership with ants. This plant grows as an epiphyte on trees and has a swollen stem riddled with tunnels. Ants colonize these chambers and live inside the plant. The ants protect the plant from herbivorous insects and provide nutrients through their waste products, which the plant absorbs through specialized structures inside the tunnels. Some chambers have smooth walls and are used by ants as living quarters, while others have rough, warty walls covered in structures that absorb nutrients from the ant waste pile. This relationship is obligate, meaning neither the plant nor the ant species can survive without the other. The acacia tree in Africa has a similar relationship with acacia ants. The tree provides swollen thorns for the ants to nest in, and produces special food bodies rich in proteins and fats that the ants eat. In return, the ants viciously defend the tree against herbivores, attacking any animal that touches the tree. The ants even bite the upper lips of giraffes that try to feed on the acacia, one of the few things that deters these large browsers. The ants also clear vegetation from around the base of the tree, reducing competition for water and nutrients. If ants are experimentally removed from acacia trees, The trees grow much more slowly and suffer increased herbivore damage. The strangler fig starts its life as a seed deposited by a bird in the branches of a host tree. The seed germinates high in the canopy and sends roots down the trunk of the host tree to the ground. These roots grow around the host trunk, eventually fusing together to form a lattice that completely encases the host. The fig also grows upward, spreading its leaves above the host tree's canopy. As the strangler fig grows, it competes with the host tree for light, water, and nutrients. Eventually, the host tree dies, often rotting away and leaving the strangler fig as a hollow cylinder of roots. Despite their aggressive growth strategy, strangler figs are keystone species in tropical forests. They produce fruit year-round, providing reliable food for many animals during seasons when other trees aren't fruiting. Over 100 species of birds and mammals feed on fig fruits, and the removal of strangler figs from a forest can lead to local extinctions of fruit-eating animals. The relationship between figs and their pollinating wasps is one of the most intricate mutualisms in nature. Each fig species has its own species of pollinating wasp, and neither can reproduce without the other. The fig isn't actually a fruit, but a specialized structure called a syconium that contains hundreds of tiny flowers inside. Female wasps enter through a tiny opening, losing their wings and antennae in the process. Inside, they lay eggs in some flowers and pollinate others. The wasp larvae develop inside the flowers, with males emerging first. These wingless males mate with the still developing females, then chew exit holes in the fig before dying. The females emerge, collect pollen, and fly to find a new fig of the right species and developmental stage, continuing the cycle. This coevolution is so specific that if a fig species goes extinct, its wasp pollinator goes extinct too, and vice versa. The Venus flytrap and other carnivorous plants demonstrate that the boundary between plants and animals isn't as clear as we might think. While plants are generally thought of as passive organisms rooted in place, carnivorous plants actively hunt prey. The sundew plant has leaves covered in sticky tentacles. When an insect lands on a leaf and becomes stuck, the tentacles slowly bend inward, wrapping around the prey. This movement takes minutes to hours but is remarkable for a plant. The leaf secretes digestive enzymes and absorbs nutrients from the insect. Some sundew species can distinguish between living prey and debris that might land on their leaves, only expending energy to wrap around objects that struggle. The bladderwort lives in water and has tiny bladders attached to its stems. These bladders are sophisticated traps with trapdoors that seal them shut. The plant actively pumps water out of the bladders, creating a vacuum inside. When tiny water fleas, mosquito larvae, or other small aquatic creatures brush against trigger hairs near the trapdoor, the door springs open and water rushes in, carrying the prey with it. The whole process takes less than a millisecond, making it one of the fastest movements in the plant kingdom. The bladderwort then digests its prey inside the bladder. These plants lack roots and float freely in the water, obtaining all their nutrients from captured prey and some mineral absorption through their leaves. The symbiotic relationship between legumes and nitrogen-fixing bacteria is essential for agriculture and natural ecosystems. Legumes including beans, peas, clover, and alfalfa host bacteria called rhizobia in special structures called root nodules. The bacteria convert atmospheric nitrogen gas into ammonia, which the plant uses to make proteins. In exchange, the plant provides the bacteria with sugars. This partnership allows legumes to thrive in nitrogen-poor soils where other plants struggle. When legumes die and decompose, the nitrogen they contain enriches the soil, benefiting other plants. Crop rotation systems have used this effect for thousands of years, alternating nitrogen-depleting crops like corn with nitrogen-enriching legumes. The relationship between legumes and rhizobia is specific, with different legume species hosting different bacterial strains. The formation of root nodules is a complex process involving chemical communication between plant and bacteria. The plant releases chemical signals into the soil, and compatible bacteria respond by swimming toward the roots. The bacteria then produce signals that cause root cells to divide and form nodules. Once inside a nodule, the bacteria change form, becoming specialized nitrogen-fixing bacteroids. These bacteroids can no longer reproduce but work exclusively to fix nitrogen. When the plant dies, some rhizobia survive in the soil, ready to form new partnerships. Scientists have studied this system intensively, hoping to engineer nitrogen-fixing abilities into crops like corn and wheat, which would reduce the need for synthetic fertilizers. The process of photosynthesis sustains almost all life on Earth. Plants, algae, and some bacteria capture light energy and use it to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. The glucose provides energy for the organism, while the oxygen is released as a waste product. This oxygen has transformed Earth's atmosphere, making it breathable for animals. The evolution of photosynthesis over 3 billion years ago was one of the most important events in Earth's history. Before photosynthetic organisms, Earth's atmosphere contained almost no oxygen. As cyanobacteria evolved and spread, they gradually oxygenated the atmosphere, poisoning most of the anaerobic organisms that had dominated Earth, but also creating opportunities for new forms of life. Animals, which require oxygen for efficient metabolism, could only evolve after photosynthetic organisms had enriched the atmosphere with oxygen. Every breath we take contains oxygen produced by photosynthesis. Photosynthesis occurs in chloroplasts, specialized structures within plant cells. Chloroplasts contain chlorophyll, a green pigment that absorbs blue and red light but reflects green light, which is why plants appear green. Chlorophyll captures light energy and uses it to split water molecules, releasing oxygen and providing energy to create glucose from carbon dioxide. This process is incredibly efficient, with some plants converting over 5% of the light energy they receive into chemical energy stored in glucose. Scientists have been trying to create artificial photosynthesis systems that could produce clean fuel from sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water, mimicking what plants do naturally. The migration patterns of monarch butterflies are one of nature's most impressive phenomena. Each fall, millions of monarchs from eastern North America fly up to 3,000 miles to overwinter in the mountains of central Mexico. They roost in dense clusters on specific oyamel fir trees, with millions of butterflies covering the branches. The weight of butterflies sometimes breaks branches. The monarchs remain relatively inactive during winter, conserving energy. In spring, they mate and begin the journey north. However, no individual butterfly completes the round trip. The monarchs that left Mexico lay eggs in the southern United States and die. Their offspring continue north, and it takes 3 to 4 generations to recolonize the northern breeding grounds. Then in fall, the last generation of the year, called the Methuselah generation, lives much longer than their parents and grandparents, surviving 8 months rather than 8 weeks. These butterflies make the entire journey back to Mexico and often return to the same trees their great-great-grandparents left the previous spring. How they navigate to a place they've never been remains one of biology's great mysteries. Research suggests they use a sun compass and can detect the Earth's magnetic field, but the details of their navigation system are still being studied. The biological clock that tells monarchs when to migrate is also remarkable, involving complex genetic and hormonal changes triggered by shortening day length and cooling temperatures. The salmon life cycle involves one of nature's most arduous journeys. Salmon hatch in freshwater streams and spend their early lives in rivers before migrating to the ocean. In the ocean, they grow rapidly, sometimes traveling thousands of miles. After several years, mature salmon feel the irresistible urge to return to spawn. They stop eating and begin swimming back toward their natal streams. They navigate across vast ocean distances using the Earth's magnetic field, the position of the sun, and possibly even the stars. As they approach the coast, their sense of smell takes over. Each stream has a unique chemical signature, and salmon can detect their home stream's smell in concentrations as low as 1 part per billion. This remarkable olfactory memory was formed during their youth when they imprinted on the chemical signature of their birth stream. The journey upstream is exhausting. Salmon swim against strong currents, leap up waterfalls, and navigate rapids. They don't eat during this journey, living off stored energy. Their bodies undergo dramatic changes. Their shape changes, with males developing hooked jaws and humped backs. Their skin color changes from silver to bright red or other species-specific colors. By the time they reach their spawning grounds, they're battered and exhausted. The female digs a nest called a redd in the gravel, deposits her eggs, and the male fertilizes them. Both parents then die within days, their bodies providing nutrients that will eventually feed their offspring. The young salmon that hatch will feed on the remains of their parents and the organisms that feed on those remains, ensuring the next generation has the nutrition to begin their own life cycle. The bombardier beetle's defense mechanism is even more remarkable when you understand the chemistry involved. The beetle stores two relatively harmless chemicals in separate reservoirs. When threatened, it releases both chemicals into a reaction chamber where enzymes catalyze a violent chemical reaction. This reaction produces heat, toxic chemicals, and pressure. The resulting spray reaches temperatures of 100 degrees Celsius, hot enough to cause pain and damage to potential predators. The beetle can precisely aim this spray by rotating the tip of its abdomen and can fire repeatedly with remarkable accuracy. The reaction chamber is protected by special heat-resistant cells that prevent the beetle from being harmed by its own weapon. This defense system has inspired engineers studying pulsed combustion and has been proposed as a model for fuel injection systems. Some frogs have evolved extraordinary parenting behaviors. The poison dart frogs of Central and South America are famous for their bright colors, which warn predators of their toxicity. These toxins are derived from their diet of ants and mites and make the frogs extremely dangerous to touch. One species, the golden poison frog, is considered the most toxic vertebrate on Earth, with enough poison in its skin to kill 10 adult humans. However, poison dart frogs raised in captivity and fed a different diet don't develop these toxins, showing that the frogs sequester toxins from their natural prey. Some poison dart frog species show remarkable parental care. The male fertilizes eggs laid on land, then guards them until they hatch. He then carries the tadpoles on his back to water-filled bromeliads or tree holes. The female returns regularly to these tiny pools and lays unfertilized eggs for the tadpoles to eat, essentially providing them with milk. Each tadpole is often placed in its own separate pool, and the mother remembers the location of each one, visiting them regularly for weeks until they metamorphose. The axolotl's regenerative abilities extend beyond limb regrowth. These salamanders can regenerate parts of their heart, spine, brain, and jaw. When scientists remove up to 40% of an axolotl's brain, the animal regenerates the missing tissue and recovers normal behavior. The heart can regenerate damaged tissue without scarring, unlike mammalian hearts that form scar tissue after heart attacks. Scientists are intensively studying axolotl regeneration because understanding the mechanisms could lead to medical breakthroughs for humans. The key lies in the axolotl's ability to dedifferentiate cells at the injury site, turning them back into stem cells that can then redifferentiate into whatever cell types are needed. Mammals have mostly lost this ability during evolution, but we do retain some regenerative capacity. Children under about 10 years old can sometimes regrow fingertips if they're severed beyond the last joint, complete with nail and fingerprint. Deer can regenerate antlers, which are true bones that grow completely anew each year. Some scientists hope that, by understanding what limits regeneration in mammals, we might be able to unlock latent regenerative programs and develop treatments that allow humans to regrow damaged tissues. The deep-sea anglerfish faces unique challenges in its extreme environment. At depths where these fish live, the pressure is immense, temperatures hover just above freezing, and it's completely dark. Food is scarce, and finding a mate in the vast darkness is difficult. The anglerfish's strange reproductive strategy solves this problem. When a tiny male encounters a female, he bites onto her and releases an enzyme that digests both his mouth and her skin where they're joined. Their bodies fuse, and their circulatory systems connect. The male becomes a permanent parasite, receiving nutrients from the female's bloodstream. In exchange, he provides sperm whenever she's ready to reproduce. Some female anglerfish have been found with multiple males attached. This bizarre arrangement ensures that females always have access to sperm without needing to search for mates in the dark ocean. The male essentially sacrifices his independence and most of his organs for a guaranteed opportunity to reproduce. The octopus eye and the human eye evolved independently, but arrived at very similar designs through convergent evolution. Both have a lens that focuses light onto a retina, and both can adjust focus. However, there are important differences. The octopus eye is in some ways superior to ours. Octopuses don't have a blind spot because their optic nerve doesn't pass through the retina as ours does. Their retina is properly oriented with photoreceptors facing the light, while mammalian retinas are inside out with photoreceptors facing away from incoming light. This seemingly backwards arrangement in vertebrates is the result of our evolutionary history and creates a blind spot where the optic nerve exits the retina. Octopuses also have rectangular pupils that can be oriented to keep the slit horizontal as the octopus tilts its head, providing better depth perception and motion detection. Despite their different designs, both eyes work well, showing that evolution can arrive at similar solutions to similar problems through different paths. The seahorse is an unusual fish with a horse-like head, prehensile tail, and upright swimming posture. Even more unusual is that male seahorses become pregnant and give birth. The female deposits her eggs into a specialized pouch on the male's belly, and he fertilizes them internally. The male's pouch provides oxygen and nutrients to the developing embryos, functioning much like a mammalian uterus. After a pregnancy lasting 2 to 4 weeks depending on the species, the male goes through muscular contraction to expel the fully formed miniature seahorses. A single male can give birth to hundreds or even thousands of babies at once. Seahorses form monogamous pair bonds and perform elaborate daily greeting dances with their partners. They meet each morning, change colors, and spiral around each other. This reinforces their bond and synchronizes their reproductive cycles. Seahorses are poor swimmers, with tiny fins that flutter up to 35 times per second just to keep them upright and moving slowly through the water. They anchor themselves to seagrass or coral with their prehensile tails to avoid being swept away by currents. Seahorses have no teeth and no stomach. They must eat constantly to survive, sucking in tiny crustaceans through their tubular snouts. Their eyes can move independently like chameleons, allowing them to watch for prey and predators simultaneously. The humpback whale is known for its haunting songs, complex vocalizations that can last for hours. Only males sing, and all males in a population sing roughly the same song, which slowly changes over time. Each population has its own distinct song, which evolves from year to year as individual whales introduce new phrases that are adopted by others. Songs from different populations occasionally mix when whales from different regions encounter each other. The purpose of whale song isn't fully understood, but it likely relates to mating, with males singing to attract females or to compete with other males. Some songs are so loud that they can be heard over hundreds of miles. Humpback whales also use a cooperative hunting technique called bubble net feeding. A group of whales swims in a spiral below a school of fish, blowing bubbles to create a cylindrical net that traps the fish. As the fish concentrate in the center, the whales swim up through the middle with their mouths open, engulfing huge quantities of fish and water. They then filter out the water through their baleen plates, trapping the fish. This sophisticated cooperative behavior requires coordination between multiple whales and shows complex social intelligence. Humpback whales migrate up to 16,000 miles round trip, from polar feeding grounds to tropical breeding grounds. During their time in cold waters, they feed intensively, building up blubber reserves. They then travel to warm waters where they breed and give birth but rarely eat for months. The barnacles are crustaceans, more closely related to crabs and shrimp than to mollusks as their shelled appearance might suggest. Barnacle larvae swim freely in the ocean, but when they mature, they cement themselves headfirst to rocks, ship hulls, whale skin, or other surfaces. Once attached, a barnacle is there for life, protected by thick calcium carbonate plates. The barnacle extends feathery legs through an opening in the plates, using them to filter plankton from the water. Barnacles are hermaphrodites, having both male and female reproductive organs. However, they cannot self-fertilize and must mate with neighbors. Since they can't move, barnacles have evolved extraordinarily long penises, sometimes up to 8 times their body length, to reach distant neighbors. Some barnacles on whale skin have evolved to become parasites, growing root-like structures that penetrate deep into the whale's blubber to extract nutrients. The archerfish's water-jet hunting ability is even more sophisticated than it first appears. When targeting prey, the fish must account not just for the refraction of light at the water surface, but also for the fact that the prey may move after being hit. The fish compensates for gravity's effect on the water jet, adjusting aim based on the height and distance of the target. Studies have shown that archerfish can hit moving targets and can even adjust their shots midstream to correct for miscalculations. Young archerfish learn these skills by observing experienced fish, and practice improves their accuracy. The fish must also learn to distinguish between real prey and reflections on the water surface. Archerfish have excellent eyesight both in and out of water, with their eyes specially adapted to see clearly in both mediums. The leafcutter ant's farming system is sophisticated agriculture. Worker ants cut pieces of leaves and carry them back to underground chambers, sometimes traveling hundreds of feet. The leaves aren't food for the ants, but rather fertilizer for their fungus gardens. The ants chew the leaves into pulp and add it to the fungus garden along with fecal material. The fungus grows on this substrate, producing specialized structures called gongolidia that the ants harvest and feed to their larvae. The fungus is a specific species that doesn't exist in the wild and has been cultivated by these ants for millions of years through artificial selection. The ants maintain the garden carefully, removing infected material and applying antibiotics produced by bacteria that live on their bodies. These bacteria specifically target parasitic fungi that threaten the garden. This three-way symbiosis between ants, cultivated fungus, and antibiotic-producing bacteria is one of the most complex agricultural systems in nature. A mature leafcutter colony can contain 8 million ants and consume more vegetation than any animal in the rainforest, except cattle. The giraffe's long neck presents physiological challenges beyond just pumping blood to the brain. When a giraffe lowers its head to drink, blood rushes toward the brain. To prevent stroke or brain damage, giraffes have a specialized circulatory system, including a complex network of blood vessels at the base of the brain called the rete mirabile that regulates blood flow. They also have unusually thick artery walls and tight skin on their legs that acts like compression stockings, preventing blood from pooling in the lower legs when standing. The jugular veins have valves that prevent backflow when the head is lowered. Despite these adaptations, drinking is a vulnerable position for giraffes. They must splay their front legs awkwardly to reach water, and they can't raise their heads quickly. They typically drink quickly and cautiously, watching for predators. Giraffes can go days without water, obtaining most of their moisture from the leaves they eat. Their long purple tongues, which can be 20 inches long, are tough and prehensile, perfect for stripping leaves from thorny acacia branches. The tongue's dark color may protect it from sunburn. Giraffes only sleep about 30 minutes to 2 hours per day in short intervals of a few minutes each, often remaining standing. When they do lie down, they typically do so in small groups with one or more remaining standing as sentinels. The platypus is such an unusual animal that early European naturalists thought specimens must be hoaxes, with a duck's bill sewn onto a beaver's body. When living platypuses were finally studied, they only became stranger. In addition to being one of only 5 species of egg-laying mammals, the platypus has a suite of bizarre features. The males have venomous spurs on their hind legs that can inject a venom unique to monotremes. The venom causes severe pain in humans that can last for weeks and is resistant to morphine. The venom system becomes more active during breeding season, suggesting its primary function is in male-male competition rather than predation or defense. Female platypuses lack functional venom spurs. The platypus bill isn't like a duck's bill despite its appearance. It's a soft, rubbery sensory organ packed with thousands of electroreceptors and mechanoreceptors. When hunting, the platypus closes its eyes, ears, and nostrils and navigates entirely by sensing the electrical fields generated by the muscle contractions of prey animals and by detecting vibrations in the water. The platypus brain devotes large areas to processing these signals, similar to how the human brain dedicates large areas to processing visual information. Platypuses hunt primarily at night, diving to the bottom of streams and using side-to-side sweeping motions of their heads to scan for prey. They store food in cheek pouches and return to the surface to eat. Baby platypuses hatch from eggs after about 10 days of incubation, breaking out of the shell with an egg tooth that falls off shortly after hatching. The tiny, pink, hairless babies are extremely vulnerable. The mother nurses them for 3 to 4 months, but without nipples, she secretes milk through pores in her skin. The milk pools in grooves on her belly, and the babies lap it up. Platypus milk contains unique antibacterial proteins that protect the babies from infections in their burrow environment. Scientists are studying these proteins as potential sources of new antibiotics. The naked mole rat's resistance to cancer is extraordinary. Despite living 30 years or more, which is extremely long for a rodent, naked mole rats almost never develop cancer. Scientists have discovered that their cells produce extremely high-quality hyaluronic acid, a substance that gives tissue structure. This high molecular weight hyaluronic acid appears to activate a tumor-suppressing pathway. If this substance is removed from naked mole rat cells, they become susceptible to cancer. Understanding this mechanism might lead to cancer prevention strategies for humans. Naked mole rats also have unusual pain reception. They lack substance P, a neurotransmitter involved in transmitting pain signals in their sensory neurons. This makes them insensitive to certain types of pain, including the burning sensation from acid and the chemical in hot peppers called capsaicin. This adaptation makes sense given that they live in underground burrows with high carbon dioxide levels, which form carbonic acid in tissues. Being sensitive to this acid would cause chronic pain. The naked mole rat's tolerance for low oxygen is also remarkable. They can survive 18 minutes in conditions with no oxygen at all by switching their metabolism to use fructose instead of glucose, a strategy previously only seen in plants. Their above-ground relatives die after just 15 seconds in the same conditions. They can also survive and function normally in atmospheric conditions with only 3% oxygen, which would cause unconsciousness in most mammals within seconds. These adaptations allow them to thrive in deep burrows where oxygen is scarce and carbon dioxide concentrations are high. The mantis shrimp lives in burrows or coral crevices in tropical and subtropical seas. Despite their small size, rarely exceeding 6 inches in length, they're among the most impressive predators. Their eyes, which sit on mobile stalks, are the most complex known. Each eye has trinocular vision, meaning it can judge depth with a single eye. They can see polarized light, ultraviolet light, and at least 12 types of color receptors compared to humans' 3. Scientists still don't fully understand how mantis shrimp process all this visual information. The mantis shrimp's hunting weapons are equally impressive. Species are divided into smashers and spearers based on their weaponry. Smashers have club-like appendages that strike prey with the force of a bullet, accelerating at over 10,000 times the force of gravity. The strike is so fast that it creates cavitation bubbles in the water. When these bubbles collapse, they produce additional shock waves and flashes of light. The combined force can shatter aquarium glass and break prey shells even if the strike misses. Spearer mantis shrimp have sharp, spear-like appendages that impale soft-bodied prey. Both types of strikes happen in about 3 milliseconds, faster than a human can blink. The mantis shrimp's clubs are made of a complex composite material that's being studied by materials scientists. Some populations have learned to drop hard-shelled nuts onto roads and wait for cars to crack them open. Others have learned to steal food from outdoor cafes or garbage bins. Their success in human-modified environments is a testament to their intelligence and adaptability. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be filled with wonder at the magnificent diversity and complexity of life on our amazing planet.